The Earnestly Speaking podcast is a show that is founded on free-flowing conversation and may at times venture into mature subjects. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Speaking Podcast. Taping this on Thursday night. I believe it's January 15th, 16th. January 16th here on the Earnestly Podcast. We're going to bring on a friend of the pod, Marc Francois, on in a couple minutes. But first, I want to talk about Championship Sunday. Now, I was supposed to have one Zach Degenerate on today on the show. We were going to go over our over-unders from the regular season. I haven't had a chance to do that. We haven't had a chance to really do podcast much in the last month and a half due to our schedules. And he wanted to go review our over-unders from this year, but unfortunately he's sick. He's pretty a bit on the weather. So get well, Zach. We'll probably do it maybe next week. We got Mark coming in the clutch. So what we'll do here, we'll do a quick cold open here. It's me talking about the Championship Sunday, and then we'll talk to Mark. We got a lot to talk about. We want to discuss the scandal, Major League Baseball scandal on the Houston Astros, the residue. And this doesn't affect the Astros anymore. It affects the Astros, it affects the Red Sox, and now my New York Mets as well, too. Who both teams have fired the managers. We'll get into the discussion about that and see whether fair or unfair, what the team should have done, all that. Talk about a little bit of politics here, a little bit. Trump impeachment, Senate impeachment a little bit. And then I think, the Democratic debate from this week, and we're closing in on the Iowa Caucus. So we'll touch on all that. Some of you guys, I'm sure you might get a little annoyed with some of the political stuff, but it's okay. If you don't like it, you can skip ahead or just don't listen to it at all. But we'll talk about Championship Sunday real quick. This Sunday is the Final Four of the NFL. I call this the last really good, cool week, normal week of football for the year, because as much as the Super Bowl is fun in terms of the game itself and all that, and even some of the hype, I've gotten so drawn away from all the pregame stuff. All the celebrities involved. Even if I was asked to go to cover the Super Bowl as a media member, I wouldn't do it because it's so fake, in my opinion. You have everybody there who doesn't really give a shit about sports as a whole, football as a whole, just there just to, whatever. And I get it. It's part of the bigness of the Super Bowl. I totally get it. But it's just, as I got older, I just want the game. I can do away with the Super Bowl halftime show, honestly. I can do away with all the extra shit. All the extra, pregame festivities that goes on for like 6 hours prior to the game. I mean, the hype itself, the actual hype and the events around the game is so much bigger than the actual game itself. And I know I'm turning 40. I know, EJ, you sound like a little old man, a little bitch. I get it. Yeah, that's fine. It's okay. I'll take it. I'll take it on the chin. I'm the Clint Eastwood character. I'm the old man. I'm the get off the lawn the guy now, and that's okay. I accept my position. I do accept my position, and my position is this: I'm just sick and tired of the extra shit around the game. So this weekend is the last normal weekend of NFL football. I love championship weekends. It is. Got two really compelling games this weekend. AFC first. Tennessee Titans, Kansas City Chiefs. Certainly one team of the two you expect to be here in Chiefs. They were here last year. Probably should have won the game against the Patriots last season. The other team, Tennessee Titans, raise your hand, they'll be in the playoffs, much less the AFC Championship game. And they're here. And they've been, what I've said, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but before the last few weeks of the year, when, for example, me and Zach were talking about teams and talking about, like, who could be a team you wouldn't want to play in the playoffs, especially in the wild card area, because you obviously need the Patriots and the Ravens and the, Chiefs were the three best teams in the league, so who could be on the bottom that could be a little bit interesting. I remember saying Tennessee a couple times because Tennessee's team, the way they're built, the way Ryan Tannehill's been playing the last, obviously since taking over as quarterbacks for Marcus Mariota, and all those little things, and Derrick Henry running mad. I said Tennessee could be a scary team because they're so balanced and such equipped to to do at least make games interesting against top teams. And then they go, they win, they get the last wild card. Without surprise, I thought they'd take it by mid-November. I was saying Tennessee would take the last wild card. Going to Foxborough, beat the Patriots. Going to Baltimore last week, beat the Ravens, and beat them pretty soundly. Who would have thought that? Now the big test here is the Chiefs team that was down 24-0 against Houston the first half, and then they came back and won the game by 20, 51-31. Although I'm going to say this real quick too. Also, even when they were up 24-0, it never felt like Houston was in control of that game. Like Kansas City was down that big because Kansas City played horribly. They made mistakes. But I remember telling folks on text, people would send me texts, "Oh my God, this is crazy! This score's insane." I remember saying, maybe they don't come back and win this game, but this game is far from over. You're in Arrowhead. There's still a full 3 quarters left of football to be played, and this offense is so prolific. They can get up points at any point, and can you trust Houston to get the job done? And of course, so the rest is history. By the way, people blaming the fake punt that turned the game around. I disagree with that 100% because I think the fake punt I actually give props to the Texans coaching staff for staying aggressive there, honestly. So I don't blame them, because if they convert the fake punt, then what? We're all a hindsight society. We really are. But anyway, so we have Titans Chiefs this Sunday in Arrowhead. The line is I believe down at 7 points now. And it's to be expected because obviously the Chiefs, actually now the line's at 7.5. Some places have 8 points now. And this is my synopsis of the game. Like for Houston to win this, for Tennessee to win this game, pretty much they have to score early. And kind of sort of just control the game. Keep Pat Mahomes off the field. Old school, pound it. Lessen the possessions for the Chiefs. Now Kansas City, the way to beat Tennessee is simple. Get up early. If you get up on the Titans early in this game, Derrick Henry is no longer a priority, because if you're up 21-0, 24-0, or have a double-digit lead, going in the second half, now you're forcing Ryan Tannehill, who I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback. Obviously, he's a very solid quarterback, so that's all year. But you're forcing, the Titans to throw the ball, which now will most likely, I'm not saying most likely, but it could happen. Obviously mistakes can be made there, but it basically it renders Derrick Henry useless at that point. So if I'm Kansas City, you want to throw the ball, you want to get up on the Titans early, jump on the lead, similar to Houston did, but with more control, of course. I'm going to take Kansas City in the points here to cover 7 points. I 7.5 points. I just think Kansas City's just right on a roll. And I think this is Andy Reid's time. I'm with Andy Reid with this whole thing, by the way. I really truly hope that Andy Reid actually finally figures it out and gets the job done. I'm not saying Tennessee doesn't have a chance, but I'm going to roll with Kansas City and Pat Mahomes to win the AFC championship there. Okay. The second game, of course, of the weekend is the Niners and the Packers. The Niners right now are also 7.5-point favorites. There's actually a site that actually has them a 9-point favorite. And I'm going to take the Niners in the blowout. Same results last time when they played in week 11, week 12, whatever it was, when these two teams met. Same spot. Like, I don't feel good about the Packers even after last week. Like, nothing in that game. And they were up 21-3 at halftime against Seattle. Russell Wilson starts to turn on because Seattle actually, and look, Pete Carroll, good coach, but sometimes he gets his own way. Let Russell Wilson play. Take the cuffs off sometimes. And once Russell Wilson was allowed to play, you started seeing Seattle really make it a game. And really, to be honest with you, if they did the ball back late in the game, and of course that first down they called for Jimmy Graham, which it looked short to me, for the record. But you give Russell Wilson the ball back, I mean, Green Bay and their fans would have their butt cheeks tighter than anything, and because Russell Wilson is the best in the business when it comes to come from behind and in late drives. I don't feel good about Green Bay. I feel much better about San Francisco. Much balanced team. Now, obviously, Garoppolo, he's been hot and cold and whatnot. He played decent last week. It was really just the running game that helped the Niners win that game last week. But I just don't see Green Bay showing. I don't know. I just don't see Green Bay. I don't feel about Green Bay now. And that being said, too, also this is a big moment for Aaron Rodgers. One ring, hasn't won a title in 10 years. And obviously, with the league changing, and obviously he's still one of the top quarterbacks in the league, but obviously got Mahomes and Wilson and Watson. How many more chances is Aaron Rodgers going to have to go to the Super Bowl and win a multiple rings? That's the question. He's been in the spot now. I think this is his 5th time now. So it's time to get the job done, or that's it. So, but I don't see it happening. I see the Niners win this game, covering the spread, covering the 7.5 points. And this is that. So again, I'm predicting a Chiefs Niners Super Bowl, and and that's just that. So enjoy championship weekend, of course. Now here is Marc Francois as we now talk about a complement of things, interesting things here on our podcast. Enjoy the conversation. All right, on the line with us today, friend of the pod, as always. We got to check in with the man Marc Francois out of California, L.A., Los Angeles, as Stone Cold Steve says on his podcast. Los Angeles. Well, he says Stone Cold says Los Angeles. Kind of cool, actually.
Stone Cold, yeah. Well, he's also a little bit of a redneck. I'll tell you what now.
Well, he is a little bit. He's definitely a Cali boy now, though. He's definitely a Cali boy now, though.
Los Angeles, if you speak Spanish.
Mm-hmm. Happy New Year to you, first of all, Mark. Can I still say that? Is that still
yeah. I don't know if we're allowed to say Happy New Year, but it's the first one of the first pod together of 2020, so it's a damn fine evening.
Yeah, let's do that, man. Anyway, a lot to talk about real quick with you. I wanted to check in on some things here. First off,
it's been so quiet since the holidays, hasn't it?
Yeah, I know, man.
Nothing
so
happening.
Quiet. Nothing's going on. The sports world's quiet. Political world is pretty quiet in itself too. Nothing going on.
World War III, presidential
Oh,
impeachment.
yeah. Well, let's start here with let's start here with the scandal around the world. The Houston Astros, the residue,
the kneecapping of America's pastime.
Oh my God!
Before we talk about the dissolution of the republic, the Constitution, and our standing in foreign policy, let's talk about the shitting on the American pastime that's taken place the last couple of years.
Fits what we're going through now, right? I mean, it sort of fits the scandal.
Honestly, it really does when you look at. So, the metronome of time swings back and forth, right and left, corrupt and just. There's revolutions and boiling points. It's just that's history, right? Whether you're studying the Stuarts, the Haitians, the French, the Americans, civil rights, whatever, it's all these tendencies still kind of remain. And I think we've swung to a tendency where corruption is kind of at a peak. It feels like, I don't know what it felt like, but according to the numbers, it looks a lot like 1928. It looks a lot like some other times in our history when we were 72, 73, when we were kind of at a tipping point for social revolution. And I think we've always come out on the other side of it better for having gone through it. And progress, sometimes as minimal as it is, tends to still be made. History tends towards progressivism.
Okay.
But no, it totally the whole winning at all costs and cheating to get ahead. It kind of fits in the landscape of the late aughts and teens.
Yeah, feels right at home. Houston Astros.
Yeah.
So obviously they suspended their manager and GM for 1 year, who then got fired anyway.
That was from MLB. Yeah,
right.
MLB suspended Lunau and Hinch for a year.
Who then got fired?
And then Crane fired him on shortly after.
Was that the right move, don't you think, by the management to go further and fire them?
The more you learn about this thing, and we'll kind of circle back to this as we pick it all apart. The one guy who comes out of this with something resembling integrity is AJ Hinch.
Why you say that?
So all reports indicate that he was at the very least the least involved. He threw a couple of temper tantrums. He tried to speak up about it and was sort of shouted down by an amalgamation of players, bench coaches, and it was not really taken seriously by Luhnow. So obviously they had to go. But it seems like Hinch did at least make sort of a fledgling effort to to put a stop to the cheating, despite loud and obviously successful protest.
Do you
so I think
right.
I think Crane kind of didn't have a choice. Definitely with Luhnow, I think especially in the wake of like what happened to Sean Payton. What was it? Greg Daniels was the coordinator's name, who was like the guy who was the real mastermind of Bountygate, and Sean Payton just got suspended, but was kind of less involved. I think Crane, that's the guy's name, Jim Crane, right? The owner of the Astros.
Yeah, sounds familiar. That sounds correct, actually. Yeah,
something along those lines. I know. I'm at least in the ballpark. I'm at least inside Minute Maid with the naming.
Oh, you're there. Yeah.
If not dead on. But
you're on deck.
I think you. Yeah. Okay. I think you could have made a reasonable argument of support to can Luhnow and keep Hinch, or at least bring him back following the suspension, sort of a la the Saints and Sean Payton. America loves a redemption story, blah, 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 blah. You still have Correa, Altuve, all these guys. So I think that could have been done, but I'm perfectly happy to see his ass get canned as he's the manager, and, somebody's got to be accountable, and sort of you're the quarterback, you're the face of the franchise from the standpoint of the coaching staff, and so when a massive institutional failure like that is perpetrated under your watch, like someone's head's got to roll, and AJ Hinch fits quite nicely in the guillotine.
Could you see him back in baseball managing again? I mean, he would be a hot
very
name.
Quickly, like the day he's off suspension.
If I'm the Mets, I'm taking him. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit.
Well, I mean, we talked about that offline, so might as well just throw it right out there. I said the Mets would be fucking brilliant to hire Hinch right away. Get him on the cheap. Let a bench coach run the show for this year. I mean, prospects are not that great to begin with for this season, and that gives you time to build a roster, let some youngsters play, bring up as many guys, make a bunch of moves. And if you've got AJ Hinch in the background, that in the digital age, they're going to find ways to get insight as to what kind of moves he might like to have made before he arrives.
Right.
And why the hell not?
No, I'm with you. I'm with you 100% there.
I mean, I think he's probably the best available manager in baseball right now.
I mean, guys won 2 World Series, won 1 already in the last couple of years. I mean, why not?
I mean, shit, bring Buck Showalter out of retirement for a year to just kind of hold the shit together.
Somebody actually put that on SNY, I think it was, had wrote an article today saying that why does it bring Showalter out of retirement?
Yeah, why not? Bring Showalter out of retirement for a year, hold the ship together while you secretly negotiate wink, wink, nudge, nudge behind Rob Manfred's back, and the day they click, released on his suspension, he's doing his press conference in Queens.
Yeah.
Unless, hey, God forbid, the baseball gods shine on the New York suburbs, and Buck Showalter or insert manager here, manages the shit out of a team that didn't have any expectations, a couple lucky moves, some timely help, and who knows, they make a deep October run and extend Showalter for a couple of years. Who the fuck knows? I think, especially when you look at how short the memory is of sports for certain things, it's Alex Cora who, should potentially end up on the permanent ineligible list with Pete Rose.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
I don't think that would be overreach at all.
Now, real quick, the Alex Cora thing was something he did in Boston, right?
Well, okay, so this is the big common link. Alex Cora was one of the main bench coaches for the Houston team in 2017.
Correct.
And their wild success over the previous couple of years is what paved the way to his job in Boston, wherein he instituted the same banging on a trash can protocol that they had been doing in Houston. So he didn't. He did like Canseco with steroids. It was like, you look at all these crossover points between guys who are affiliated with steroids, like A-Rod or Clemens or whoever. They cross over with Canseco several times. All those guys that all played with Canseco at one point or another. It's like Alex Cora, got caught a lot sooner, but kind of did the same thing that Canseco did. He took his product with him where he went. That is like, that's RICO, that's racketeering, like that. I mean, fuck you, dude. That's criminal enterprise.
Mm-hmm. Now, the guy that the whistleblower and this whole thing, the guy's name, I forgot the guy's name. Fear.
Mike Fires, Brian Fires, something like that.
Right.
I know it's pronounced Fires, the last
name.
For sure.
Did you
see?
Yeah,
okay, so we can just jump right to it. Jessica Mendoza kind of got blasted by people for saying she didn't love the way he told the story. And, I kind of see her point in that. Look, is this guy a snitch to Jose Altuve and Correa and maybe even Verlander? Of course he is, because he, just shit all over their win. However, the two most aggrieved teams in all of this are the Yankees and the Dodgers, with the biggest fan bases and huge alumni classes and everything. So ultimately, I think history is going to remember this guy well. However, it was chicken shit to run to the media with it if he hadn't first made a plea to baseball or to Crane or through his agent, whatever the appropriate channels are.
Right.
I'm sure there are steps in the process that come before talking to The Athletic. And I don't imagine he followed them all or exhausted all those efforts. And if that's true, okay, there's some grumbling there's some grumbling that is justified, but in no way, shape, or form abdicates the involved parties absolves them of their responsibility in one of the biggest cheating scandals to affect the World Series, right up there with the Blackhawks and Pete Rose betting on games. Or Black Sox.
Black Sox, right. Here's my question.
Same city, wrong team.
Right, yeah, that's true. Here's my question. Why did he do this? I'm still wondering, was this a vendetta here? I mean, I'm just curious. Why does come out?
I don't know enough about the background to see, okay, did this guy get cut from the team? Did he get dicked over by the front office? Obviously, there were a ton of, fraternity bros running rampant throughout the Houston front office when you look at that guy that was, screaming obscenities at the female reporters, talking about Osuna. I can't think of his name now, Brian Tenenbaum or something like that.
I remember that, though.
Whatever. He's not important. But obviously there was a culture there. So maybe he did talk about it, and maybe people, told him to go fuck off because we won the championship. If that's the case, well, okay, then go to the media, but maybe go to the commissioner's office and the MLBPA first.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe he just had a stroke of conscience, and looking at his ring on the dresser every night makes him want to throw it through the window or something, because he feels like it was won deceitfully. And look, I'm the first Dodger. I'll say this: they fucked us out of the 2017 World Series because we had that thing won in Game 5. We had a nice lead up in Houston. We were going to put them away. Cruise to a win at home in Game 6 after whooping their ass and demoralizing them. That was, in Game 6 we did win. So that one really grinds my gears, especially when I consider the fact that I spent a pretty considerable sum of money on pairs of World Series tickets for my girlfriend and I for Games 1 and 7. And A, there shouldn't have been a Game 7, and B, that fucking stings to know we got screwed. Plain and simple. However, Boston, I argue, that cheating or not, hell, even if the Dodgers were implementing the Houston cheating scam and not Boston, we still probably lose that series because Hyun-Jin Ryu was like 1.5 better ERA at home versus on the road. Should have thrown Rich Hill in Game 2, 9 miles from his hometown in front of his entire extended family. And so we lost a game we really needed to steal. We got beat like a drum throughout. You know, Cody Bellinger came off an NLCS MVP that year and got put on the bench because apparently he can't hit lefties. The kid's fucking bat was on fire, and he was trying to bounce back from having a pretty crappy World Series as a rookie against Houston. And, you know, he didn't get any at-bats. I think he got like 18 at-bats in the entire World Series. So... So, yeah, I think Boston probably wins that series either way. And their pitching was ridiculous.
So you agree
between Sale and David Price and Joe Kelly, like they were lights out a complete
Joe Kelly
team start to finish.
Joe Kelly was nuts. Joe Kelly was absolutely phenomenal in that series.
Yeah. I think the best Dodgers team we had of the 3 years was arguably 17 or 19, this team that just got beat by Washington. I still don't think Washington was a better pound-for-pound squad. I don't think, like, if you total up their average numbers in MLB The Show or something, I imagine the Dodgers still are the better squad on paper. But they caught us slipping. And they got red hot, and they beat our ass and everybody thereafter. But no, I think the 19 squad or the 17 squad are probably better than the 18 squad was, and the 18 squad probably wasn't going to beat Boston one way or the other.
Right. Now,
but the fact that this all happened is it's a tragedy.
Right.
It completely destroys it. You know, it chips away at the romanticism of baseball.
It really sure does. Now, you agree with Alex Cora firing, obviously, and that probably be the worst one. It may end up in a lifetime ban. The Mets, however, also let go Carlos Beltran, who was a player.
Well, I heard he resigned.
Well, he resigned.
I heard he resigned.
Come on,
that it was all pretty mutual.
Mark, they nudged him.
They
nudged him.
Okay, but I mean, that one, it's like, okay, I get the move and everything, and that probably indicates that he was a principal participant or instigator of the scheme, which isn't good because I really like Carlos Beltran historically as a player. I think, you know, he was one of the guys I liked watching play over the years, even though he never wore the Dodger uniform. So if that's true, that sucks. However, I don't know that you needed to do that, but hey, maybe if it gets him AJ Hinch, it puts him in a better spot instead of going with a first-time manager fresh off the playing field.
Well, there's definitely I'll say as much from people like friends of mine and Mets fans. Definitely a mixed feelings of this whole situation with Beltran because there are some who believe that this should have been done and it makes sense, and there's some who believe this is stupid.
Where do you fall on it?
I understand where I fall in more than anything else is that if it was a guy who had some commodity, I would have said no. Let's say it was Girardi, for example, or let's say it was a manager that that's done some stuff. Sorry, I'm not risking my manager losing his job.
Yeah, well, you know what it tells me. So I'm of two minds about it then, because I say this. His willingness and his silence in stepping away. Let's say if he thought he was getting screwed, I don't imagine Carlos Beltran would keep quiet about it. Number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, it's clear. It seems like if he was a really important if he was not in fact a really big participant in this whole thing, parting ways with him was probably stupid. And cost them some season ticket revenue. Mm-hmm. But the fact that this has all shook out the way that it did, he was probably very involved in the construction or continuation of this whole plot.
Yeah,
and that sucks.
Right, it does.
It's. I'm not mad. I'm disappointed, Carlos.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying this way. Sean Payton Bill Belichick, two guys involved in scandals in the NFL, two guys who have commodity, and two guys that Robert Kraft and the Loomis family, who the owners of the Saints are, I forgot their names, will not fire, despite all the smoke around them.
And I kind of put Hinch in the same bucket with Peyton and Belichick in that they bent or broke rules, but they didn't really go further above and beyond than anybody else who's cheating would, I think. You know what I mean? Like Daniels, obviously,
Mark,
he was the ringleader of the whole thing.
They did it because they knew that it's not worth the hassle keeping a guy who hasn't proven jack shit. First manager's job, okay, who hasn't proven jack shit yet, okay, and not worth the headache. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the other thing. For instance, Bill Belichick, let's get it straight. He didn't win 6 rings because of Deflategate and a couple of video cameras.
Right.
Like, I'm sure that didn't hurt, but Tom Brady has made chumps look like Pro Bowlers for 20 freaking years, and that's got nothing to do with a video camera or a couple of PSI on a cold day.
Right, I agree. But the Mets did it because they simply.
But no, this thing is a damn mess, and I think MLB didn't go far enough. Number one,
really,
I suspect that there was probably a deal made during the investigation with the MLBPA that granted the players immunity, which is why they got such detailed information in their report.
Mm-hmm.
But even if that's the case, I still wish there would have been some kind of accountability laid at least upon the players most principally involved.
Right.
Because here's the thing. Baseball is, like, when you're talking about the ability of a professional hitter, if a guy knows credibly whether or not he's seeing a fast pitch or a slow pitch, whether it's a cutter, two-seamer, four-seamer, splitter, or whether it's a slurve, a 12-6, or, whatever, a fading slider, whatever pitch they want to throw. If you at least know fast or slow, combine that with the ability and experience of a professional hitter and how fine-tuned their abilities are, you exponentially increase the likelihood of success. And that massively changes the odds of the game. And that is what's, so royally screwed in this, is that it really is like you're pounding away, what you're doing pounds away at a pillar of what makes baseball challenging.
Right. Well, it's a good point. It's a good point. I guess.
Which is why it sucks.
Right, of course. And I'm really curious when the season starts, what will be the conversation in April? Will this still be hanging over our heads?
Yeah, and I really believe there should be penalties upon the players and the franchise to the tune of all their World Series bonuses revoked, all their whatever media broadcast bonuses the Astros received for from the league for participating in the postseason. That should all be revoked in the form of a fine or a penalty or what have you.
Right.
And in the grand scheme of what baseball teams make on their broadcasts and stuff, it's probably still a drop in the bucket, even if you amortize it over 10 years.
Yeah, it may be some bug for us, people like this, but players ain't want to pay that shit.
Yeah, it may sound
real.
It may sound like he sticks sum of money. I venture to guess, and it probably should be a 9-figure number because they profited massively, especially above and beyond the field. Like ball clubs they receive incentives for making the postseason, making each successive round of the postseason, winning a championship. All these things come with broadcast bonuses, players bonuses, contracts, endorsement incentives, all these things. These guys profited a significant percentage more than had their season ended on September 30th with all of the other schleps in the league. So I venture to guess a lot of these guys, especially maybe teams on the cusp or teams like the Yankees, are pretty pissed off that Aaron Judge didn't make an extra $1.5 million for winning the pennant, or that he didn't have a chance to win an extra $2-3 million and $5 million in incentives for winning a World Series. And here's the thing why I think it doesn't go away quickly and quietly. It seems like MLB is trying to quickly dispatch of this thing, telling teams they're not allowed to talk about it, what have you. But again, the two most aggrieved parties in all of this are the Dodgers and the Yankees.
The two
arguably profitable.
No. Let's go further than that.
Like the Yankees are the
two biggest franchises in baseball. Arguably the two.
Well, I mean, you might be. I don't know the numbers well enough to know. But so the Yankees are far and away number one, the most money-making franchise. That number one, biggest, baddest, everything. Like literally, they're like first at everything. And then there's a pretty good-sized cliff to everybody else, and it's getting smaller as these big city teams are getting bigger. But in no particular order, it's the Dodgers, Red Sox, and Cubs. You know, global fan base, global viewership, probably number of fans around the country that spend on the MLB package, whatever. You talk about value of the team. It's probably those three teams in no particular order. So the two people who got shafted the hardest by the Astros and Red Sox, two of the four largest franchises in baseball. Well, you've got a big problem and literally millions of pissed off fans.
Yeah.
And two very powerful ownership groups that I don't think are going to go away quietly on this.
It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And especially when you think about it, the Dodgers, they got screwed twice.
You know, you cheat in two biggest teams in fucking all baseball.
That's
a bad spot to be in, bro.
About the Tampa Bay Rays or the Colorado Rockies. Like you literally fucked with the Guggenheims and the Steinbrenners. Like really?
Yeah.
Okay, Rob. If you want that fight, you want that smoke, be my guest.
Yeah.
Your tenure as a commissioner was off to a pretty good start.
All right, let's switch things here a little bit to the Democrat debate.
Yeah, so long story short, I think this thing's far from over. There are two silly things that we have to address, though, before we close this topic out, and that's why we can end it with a laugh. First, the silly but somewhat reasonable. There's a local hero Dodgers fan. This guy, he's known as Bluebeard. Is this guy Jose Lara.
Okay.
Lifetime Dodger fan, big season ticket holder. 30 years spent in the ballpark. Blah 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 blah. The usual story, right?
Right.
Big goatee like Jim the Anvil Neidhart, dyed bright.
Ooh.
So he did an interview with our local CBS affiliate, and he was talking about how there should be a class action lawsuit of, like, say, Dodgers and Yankees fans against MLB for not taking harsh enough action and doing more to compensate the fans who were so badly screwed by all of this. So while a little silly, I'm like, you know what, Jose? When I think about how much money I spent on World Series tickets, I love your idea. Get Larry H. Parker and every ambulance chaser on TV you can find to form a class, and let's go get them. Let's get some Steinbrenner and Guggenheim sponsorship behind us. No,
shit, I'm mad too.
But the really silly one that is an actual waste of taxpayer dollars, and that even I, as a person with the LA logo tattooed on my chest, have to go, like, you guys got to be shitting me. The LA City Council took up a vote whether or not to officially, like, notify baseball that they should vacate the championships and award them to the Dodgers. And I'm like,
nah.
You guys might want to go talk to Dave and the fellows about that, because I can guarantee you there's not any guy on either one of those squads that would welcome that ring and going down in the history books as the champion that year.
I wouldn't do it.
There's not a chance in hell.
Too much pride.
So they wasted a lot of money and made themselves look pretty stupid and childish, I think, today. Mm-hmm. So that's from one Angelino to the city council. You guys fucking whiffed on that one.
Y'all crazy as fuck out there. That's what I'm just saying. Y'all know the world.
Yeah, you know, people in LA or people out west in general are sensitive, but they're also shady. So it's like your sensitivity isn't really merited. That's why they misunderstand people from the East Coast all the time.
True. Okay.
All right, so into real scandals, the unraveling of the national discourse, right?
Well, wait. Well, before we get to the impeachment stuff, did you see Democrat debates earlier in the week?
Yeah. I mean, you could talk about the unraveling of the national discourse relative to that as well, I suppose.
Let's go there first. I didn't watch.
Yeah.
No, Mark, I didn't watch it, but what I did take out of it though was the whole.
Hashtag Iowa so white.
There's a whole Liz Warren, Bernie Sanders little rivalry going on,
so
a little back and forth.
This dust up thing is the dumbest thing ever, and Samantha Bee called it perfectly, and she's like, it was highlighted by Amy Klobuchar's jokes falling flat, no people of color, and mom and dad got in a fight, and that's when she like pops up the picture of Bernie and Elizabeth Warren.
That's funny.
So I mean, it's such a fucking non-story.
Is it really?
It sounds like it's like the Pod Save guys talked about this because they did a debate recap in the immediate aftermath, and I think it was Tommy who made this comment, but could be wrong. Anyway, he's saying, I think they genuinely both believe they're telling the truth. They had a one-on-one conversation quite some time ago. It's no secret that the human memory is quite a bit more terrible than most people believe or are willing to accept. And so there's a really good chance they've both walked away with an understanding that they believe to be true. Elizabeth Warren thinks she heard Bernie say that a woman couldn't be president yet in America.
Right.
And he doesn't think he said that. They probably could both pass a polygraph to their respective effects. So to me, this is a non-story. It's stupid partisan BS that simply is like, I mean, it was the Warren campaign that put this out. To me, regardless, you're just giving ads and clips to Trump for the general, regardless of who the nominee is. And if the ultimate goal is to remove the most incompetent president of modern history from the office, cannibalizing one another through the primary process doesn't seem like a great way to go, number one. And then more specific to Iowa, Iowans don't tend to respond to like the petty shit. So I just didn't see the political value in the Warren campaign, even if it's true, releasing it at this stage. Do it before Super Tuesday. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Why before Iowa when retail politics and integrity tend to drive the discussion? It didn't seem like a wise move.
And she didn't shake his hand in the debate? That's true, right? She didn't shake his hand.
Yeah, She was like, you called me a liar on national TV, and he was like, wait, what? No. You know what? We're not going to do this right here with 40 CNN cameras
bad
pointed
optics,
at our heads.
dude.
We're
Such
not
bad
getting
optics.
mic'd up.
We're
not going to do this here. And then Tom Steyer walked up like a jackass and was like, "Hi, Bernie. I just wanted to say I didn't want to step into anything, but I just wanted to say hello."
You know how I interpreted that when I heard about that and I saw the clips of that. This is how I interpreted it. Point Joe Biden. Point Joe Biden.
Yeah, he actually had a pretty good night. And as the front runner, all polling indicates he's the front runner, regardless of how you slice it, in all national polls and in all the polls with people of color and so on and so forth.
You wouldn't think so.
So
though,
really, all he has
he's
to do is not. What's that?
You wouldn't think so based on the conversation, but he is the front runner still.
Yeah, I mean, no matter how they poll, how they twist and turn the numbers, it all seems to point to Joe. So, I mean, when you're in that position, all you really have to do is not shit the bed. And he has yet to do that. I mean, apart from his one little dust-up where Kamala Harris sent him home a smacked ass, he's had a run of barring a few gaffes, he's had a run of overall pretty solid debate performances, and that's all he really needs to do. Because he's the front runner, and he's beaten most people by like 10 points.
Yeah. Speaking of the candidates now, Cory Booker, gone. Marianne Williamson, gone. So, these are no surprises, of course, but this is a sign that we're definitely getting to the nitty-gritty now. Iowa's 3 weeks away.
Well, and I think it goes back to that whole thing where I said, the metronome of time and corruption and all these things, it swings in many different directions. And again, we're kind of at a point where it's evident from 2016. We got really good tastes of it in like 2000 with Bush and Gore. It kind of got masked a little bit in 2004 because Kerry was a substitute teacher of a candidate against, a still rallying Bush on 9/11. And then, Obama kind of covered it up with a genuine grassroots wave of enthusiasm that brought people out to the polls in droves. And then, circle around back to 2016 and now 2020, you see that the early primary process and how we're filtering out candidates. I get the changes the DNC made having to do like money and polling in order to keep the early debates from being an absolute shit show. Mm-hmm. Having, 3 nights of 14 candidates per night, every time you want to have a debate. But nevertheless, it forces us to evaluate candidates based on their performance early on in states that is in no way, shape, or form reflective of the national conversation or the national ethnic or socioeconomic makeup. So I think that when we talk about things like campaign finance reform or Senator Warren's anti-corruption bill, these things that sort of need to fundamentally happen in order for other more specific issues to be able to experience change and not hit lobbying roadblocks and shit like that. The primary process is as much evident as anything in our electoral system that's broken.
Right. Oh, yeah. Super PACs, all that bullshit.
I mean, it's easy for me to say, but California, Florida, Texas, those are states that should probably be up first. And look, we got to acknowledge the truth. I don't even think most Iowans know this. And based on the late night comedy news shows, I'm not wrong when I say this. Most Iowans don't even know that the Iowa caucuses being first sort of happened by accident. The New Hampshire primary was the first real primary in the election, and the Iowa caucuses just sort of got dovetailed into that, and nobody had really paid a whole lot of attention to it until Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy Carter went out there and did the whole 99 county tour, no malarkey, whatever the bus was for McCain, call it what it was. He did it before anybody else. And he went out there and he shook hands with everybody in Iowa, and he ate pork chops at the fair, and he did all this, and everyone went, holy shit. And it blew him into New Hampshire with a ton of momentum. So Iowa, as a result, has become an important first stage in the primary process for no real rhyme or reason other than sort of good strategic planning and Machiavellian cunning on Jimmy Carter's part. So there's really no reason that it can't or shouldn't be changed to better reflect the overall national discourse and put forth candidates that are ultimately going to reflect the national electorate, not a handful of tiny states who wield a disproportionate amount of power because of the way our system is set up.
Are you ready for the this year's election process?
I'm actually really undecided. When I watched the debates, especially last night or 2 nights ago, whatever it was, by the time we're recording this and airing it, I'm not sure. The most recent Iowa Des Moines Register debate, whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't see anybody that gets me excited. And I'm easily excited about this.
Well, your girl's gone. Kamala's gone.
Well, yeah, Kamala Harris was my pick out of the gate. But, I'm also very reasonable in that she was vanquished in accordance with all of the rules of the game. And so, you got to work with what's left. Her argument was bested. She didn't make the argument that I was hoping she would and thought she could. At least not in a significant enough way to stay on. Also, and I think there might have been mistakes made on her part where, she qualified for some debates and stuff, and even if she wasn't meaningfully dumping money into her campaign, she might have been able to, get some death rattles out of it and re-jumpstart the campaign. Who knows? Especially going into other states, but I guess we'll never know.
True.
She hopefully could be the attorney general or vice president or something. But none of that withstanding. Nobody up there makes you go, holy shit, that's a president.
Not Bernie.
Biden makes me go, holy shit, I wish he would have run in 2016.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Buttigieg, I don't think I think he's just green on the vine. And I think he's got major blind spots with people of color. Senator Warren, I think unless she emerges as the nominee with an extremely moderate, able to connect sort of running mate, maybe a Cory Booker or Julian Castro or something like that, she's going to be in trouble because she will drive so much voter turnout on the other side. And I think she'll ultimately fail to capture a lot of that 42% independent, 41% independent vote, the Obama-Trump voters and the people who stayed home in 2016 and what have you. So I don't see anybody up there that really makes me go, holy shit, that's our next president.
And then you wonder why.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 46th president of the United States was not on that stage in Iowa the other night.
And then you wonder why I think Trump will win in 2020. Then you wonder why I think
Well, I mean, it's not a crazy assertion, but it almost seems unfathomable. It's like we all thought that was a complete impossibility in 2016, that there's no one so blatantly incompetent and corrupt could win the White House, and boy, were we wrong. And if the Democratic leadership in this country hasn't figured out yet that it can and will happen again if you don't, man up, woman up, whatever you want to say, and go out and win this thing. We're looking at 8 years of Trump, or maybe 6 years of Trump and 2 years of Mike Pence or something, because the impeachment is looking pretty damning at this point, but also in no way, shape, or form encouraging based on the positions of prominent Republicans.
Well, let's go there now. The impeachment it started today, the Senate proceedings.
Yep.
What did we learn today?
The Chief Justice, John Roberts, swore in the senators. I think what we learned about the impeachment was really more stuff peripheral to it, with the Lev Parnas interviews with Anderson Cooper and most explosively Rachel Maddow last night and tonight.
Okay.
He basically goes out and corroborates everything that Sondland and Yovanovitch and Fiona Hill said. He adds upon it. And obviously you're talking about the statements of a con man, so it needs to be corroborated, but it aligns with everything that's so far been, testified to by the witnesses in front of the House Judiciary and House Intelligence Committees. And most importantly, he draws a very clear and direct line between himself, Rudy Giuliani, the president, Bill Barr, Mick Mulvaney, literally everyone was in the loop, all the way down to Rick Perry. And he goes into some pretty frightening and shocking details about how far all this Ukraine shit went and how specific it was to the Bidens and how it was very specifically connected to the election. So, we can all sit here and scream and cry and bitch about Trump lying to us 15,000 times since he's been president, or, the 20-plus credible allegations of sexual misconduct, assault, and rape against him. All these different things, emoluments, you name it. But in this one specific instance, relative to the articles as presented by the Speaker of the House, this goes to the very specific, fundamental reasoning when they were building Article 2 at the Constitutional Conventions of, what the Founding Fathers feared. And there's quotes by, Madison and Ben Franklin and John Adams all. about how, and it's from a totally different scope. They were looking at it more as like a burgeoning republic was incredibly vulnerable to world powers like, the Habsburgs and the French and the British and whatnot. So it was sort of looking at it through a different scope. But ultimately, their greatest concern relative to impeachment, when they define high crimes and misdemeanors and the cause for which a president can be impeached, the very impetus behind that was foreign interference in our elections.
True. Good point.
And not only has the president continued to enrich his own personal wealth at a shocking degree, has he violated so many norms and policies of previous administrations relative to putting people in places that don't belong, what have you. Now, this is really the stunning thing. The Lev Parnas stuff makes great TV. But the really scary thing that could swing those very vulnerable senators that we always hear about, Murkowski, Mitt Romney, Lamar Alexander, who's retiring, but, an old sort of, pillar of the Senate, what have you.
Right.
It's the GAO report that came out today. Did you see those stories floating around?
No, did not see that.
Okay, so the GAO is a government accountability office, a nonpartisan government watchdog that has long been staffed by the most bureaucratic bookworms. Like, could not give a shit about any political party, blue, purple, red, green, or any other color. They just do really, really, really boring administrative and investigative work.
Okay.
And they released a really, really, really damning report specifically outlining the items, section, subsection, whatever, of the United States Federal Code that the president and his administration violated in the OMB's withholding of the congressionally appropriated aid funds for Ukraine. So regardless of why, the president and his administration violated the United States Code in ordering the withholding of congressionally appropriated aid to a country that was in an active war with one of our known and declared enemies.
Okay.
And then you add the layer that it was for political gain in an upcoming election. This isn't about Russia. This isn't about 2016. This isn't about Russia, if you're listening, DNC, Podesta, Clinton. No. This was the election that is yet to happen. Twice the president invited foreign interference in our elections. And now there's a clear-cut line that not only to strong arm that capitulation out of a foreign government, he withheld congressionally appropriated funds to a country in need, at war, and in violation of the United States Code. So yes, the president broke the law. To everyone that wants to say, check the call, it was perfect, blah, 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 none of that matters. None of that matters. The GAO has demonstrated clearly and concretely that the president and his associates broke the law.
And GAO is
very, very,
GAO,
very serious and felonious way.
And you said GAO is a nonpartisan.
Yeah, there's absolutely no Peter Strzok, Lisa Page. Like, there's no way, short of just outright disgusting human display, that you can demean the work or the credibility of the people that produced this report.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Now, how much?
There's all
how much
this
spin
other
is that?
stuff you could say
Wait,
that's
quick.
like,
How much spin is that getting on in mainstream media right now, though? I haven't seen anything about that. What you told me.
Well, okay, so the Parnas, it depends. It depends on which shows you watch. But if you watch shows that typically have a lot of lawyers on them, the one I really like, I don't like all of MSNBC, and I know you're kind of like mixed on your media with them.
Yeah.
But Deadline White House, Nicole Wallace's show,
Mm-hmm.
she always tends to have a lot of former administrative staffers herself. She was the campaign chair for McCain in '08 and the communications director for President Bush during the second term, first and second term, actually. So she's a pretty qualified source. These are not just, columnists for the Washington Post. Yes, they have that too.
Okay.
But I like Ari Melber, the beat with Ari and Deadline White House, because they tend to have a lot of former U.S. attorneys, FBI counterterrorism directors, people with really boring and serious jobs to come on and do the talking, and then they just kind of fill some of the space with, Washington Post, New York Times, Politico people.
Right.
But they do bring in a lot of credible sources and explain some of the wonkier, nerdier parts of this. And on the beat today, they did not only a good section on the GAO, but talked about some of the ways that Roberts actually has some ability to exert a little control in presiding over the proceedings.
I just realized recently that I don't watch a lot of news like I used to, like CNN or MSNBC or anything that matter. I don't watch any.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't watched much of mainstream media in quite a while.
See, I have it. I work from home for my day job, so I flip through it throughout the day. I'm constantly flipping back and forth between podcasts, sports talk radio, news, and whatever phone call I'm dealing with for work. But so it's kind of always on in the background, and I'm flipping through lots of different things. But
right.
I wouldn't say I watch a ton of it. There's a couple of shows I like to beat with Ari and Deadline White House, and then I try. Those are my stories that I watch every day.
kind of like watching soap operas. Yeah.
Watching my stories.
I'm a podcast
My girlfriend
guy.
comes home. I'm like, don't bother me, babe. I'm watching my stories.
I'm a podcast guy. I'm through and through. I'm an audio guy through and through.
Mm-hmm.
I would.
That's still my preferred.
Well.
I do a lot of podcasts. I've been really on a lot of history and foreign policy lately.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting to see how that impacts the election as I've gotten more off of domestic issues and more into foreign policy issues, as that's emerged as a pretty serious threat to our national security over the last couple of years.
Right. How long do you think this process will take? In terms of the Senate, how long do you think before?
Honestly, that I don't have any earthly idea about. That's one of those things I just don't even know. It's hard to say because there's a few things at play here. Mitch McConnell and much of his GOP Senate caucus have come out and said quite plainly that they have every intention of stonewalling this thing, making it as painful a process as possible for Nancy and the House managers, and that they have every intention of acquitting the president and putting the sham to bed. But they just took an oath on the Constitution and the Bible, and they signed their name in a book.
Why would he say that? Why would Mitch McConnell say that? Even if he knew he was going to do that, why would he say it publicly?
Because when you see when you watch the direct interviews, and I'm talking the long version, you go on YouTube and watch the 40-minute uninterrupted version of an interview with the people that roll on Trump, the guys like Scaramucci.
Yeah.
And now Lev Parnas, Michael Cohen. What they talk about is it really is a cult of personality around there, and it is a cult-like environment. Everyone gets caught up in the frenzy, and now what you're seeing too is that sort of the Trump corruption sickness is making its way so far down into the deepest parts of administrative and executive function for the country that the rational voices, the guardrails, the grown-ups, whatever we want to call them, that we expected to babysit Trump and powder him and give him his cheeseburger every night, they're gone. And he's surrounded by sycophants, and the most dangerous one among them is William Barr, because he is an attorney general that long before Trump became president has believed that despite the raw text of Article 2, that the president is afforded almost unlimited power, if not unlimited power, and has written a number of papers and statements and given lectures and panel discussions on how he thinks the presidential powers and the executive powers are basically unlimited. And that's really scary when you're talking about a president as despotic as Trump wishes he could be.
Well, it sucks to have to go through this during an election year. It sucks, but
Mm-hmm.
it is what it is. So I don't know.
My biggest fear is that the Democrats are going to shit the bed like they did in 2016.
Because that's what they
lose
do,
a really
man.
winnable
It's what
election
they
to the
do.
least likable presidential candidate in the history of the tracking.
Because they can't get out their own way, Mark. You know this.
Mm-hmm. It's that same joke I made last time about the newsroom when I told you needed to go watch it. And I said, if liberals are so fucking smart, why do they lose so goddamn always?
Arrogance. That's why.
It really is.
It's
letting LA and New York.
And
it's letting LA and New York be a little too snooty and telling
no.
pro-life Democrats in Kansas that they don't have a place with us because they're heathens that don't believe in abortion. That's one of those things that tends to alienate people who should and would otherwise stop voting against their own interests and vote Democrat. But until we can get off our liberal elitist high horse about some things, it's not going to change, which is why I remain independent. Because, I think a lot of things have swung too far to the right, and the right has gotten completely corrupted by Trump. So that just sort of scares the shit out of me on a macro scale.
Mm-hmm.
So, lesser of two evils and what have you, I tend to lean more Democrat, but I'd still consider myself a fiscal moderate. I want accountability built into social measures. I don't want to just throw money at problems.
The same exact way.
A prohibitive military, but I also think that there's an argument to be made to be spending more on intelligence and foreign policy than on just solving every problem with a broadsword.
And not only that, I don't want to be looked at in that way as an extremist. I just don't. Sorry. Even if I talk about things, I have an opinion on something. I don't want to look at it as this guy's just anti this. I want to be sound of mind.
And I do believe there are some very extreme changes that need to be made to the structure of our system as it pertains to gender equality, economic mobility, racial equality, systemic racism, all these different things. That doesn't mean I'm an extreme leftist, that I totally just wave the Bernie Elizabeth flag.
Absolutely.
That, for instance, in the 2016 election, Bernie seemed like the most viable candidate with the most integrity. To me, it should have been between Bernie and Kasich or Bernie and Biden, two very reasonable people. But instead, Fox News presented us with a clown car, and the king of the clowns emerged.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say
John Kasich are drowned out because we recoil at intelligence
I just hate the cult of personality
and we feel threatened by it.
And it's not just with Trump. It was there with Obama too. The cult of personality.
Oh
thing.
yeah, it totally was. No, look, there's certain inflection points, of course. President Obama's election is an inflection point in the national discussion relative to racism. It empowered a whole lot of hate groups, much in the same way that the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, things like that did in the 60s. There was a big push for rights and progress and advancement, and a whole bunch of old white people that were scared that, they think people having equality or equity somehow diminishes their own. They pushed back. And so Medgar Evers got murdered, and Martin Luther King was murdered, and countless people were lynched, and all these different things. Emmett Till. It's the same with President Obama. Hate groups, sparked a huge comeback on in the wake of the Tea Party movement.
For the record, people on this podcast know this. You were a pretty big critic of Obama.
Twice voted against Obama.
Yep.
Registered Republican until July 2016.
Right. So, just saying.
But some really if you look at the tracking of the Southern Poverty Law Center and other groups that have been that are involved in hate groups and fighting them, whether it's the Anti-Defamation League or whatever, white nationalists, white supremacist groups have been exponentially growing since 2008.
Right.
They have had their flames fanned by politicians who tacitly approve of openly white supremacist conduct by some of their more fringe members. When we talk about sort of the crazies in the House, a lot of the people that sort of got gobbled up by by the Tea Party movement say some really dangerous shit. Guys like Steve King from Iowa. And they do some really disgusting things. And then it sort of culminates with Trump, who I believe is a racist. I don't think he wants to personally see the demise of Jews and immigrants and black people, in a final solution or anything. But I also don't think he loses any sleep about when they get a raw deal or end up dead or in prison. Right. So that's really fucking gross. And when people do things like Charlottesville, there's still a number of guys that perpetrated some really horrible beatings that day that haven't been caught. And that stuff is really, really, really dangerous regardless of what your party affiliation is. And even though I don't agree with a good portion of the methodology on how the Democratic nominees want to right the ship, right. Just having somebody who's not a narcissistic, sociopathic Nazi with a diminishing mental capacity, that'd be great.
Well, let's not. Well, end the podcast there on the depressing note. What we'll do, what we'll do there is we'll check in definitely during the Iowa Caucus, after Iowa Caucus, which is only 3 weeks away. What's the exact date on that?
February 6th.
So
something like that. Whatever that Tuesday is.
After the Super Bowl, in other words. Okay.
Yeah, I believe it's the Tuesday following the Super Bowl.
There you go. Perfect timing. So we're gonna have a lot to talk about there. We'll have the Oscars coming.
You're gonna have a whole bunch of. That doesn't bode well for people either, because everyone's gonna be still hungover, especially if it's Kansas City in the Super Bowl. That extends to Iowa.
Oh yes, right. The parade will probably be on Tuesday.
Dude, winter drinking, parades. Like, if the Chiefs win, you're gonna have a lot of people in, for instance, Des Moines has a ton of Royals fans. A lot of people called in sick to work when they won the World Series. If Patrick Mahomes brings a Lombardi to KC, half of Des Moines ain't showing up to work. Not a good thing. Not to mention that you got 3 candidates who can't be out campaigning in a retail politics state because they're jurors in an impeachment trial. So that at least bodes well for Mayor Pete and Tom Steyer. Okay, can we just take a minute? And the little bit of TV. Let's a joking fallback. Telling some folks they need to fall back, that is, Tom Steyer and Michael Bloomberg with the ad spend. Holy shit. Have you noticed?
No, I've not at all. I mean, Bloomberg to some extent.
Maybe it's a California thing, and it's different. Maybe they're not making the ad push in Florida the way they are here. But Jesus Christ, I tell you, on CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, every sporting event, primetime network television, every other commercial, sometimes a couple in a row, is for either Tom Steyer or Michael Bloomberg. And it is oppressive.
And Bloomberg has no shot. He has no shot. I don't even think half his country knows he's in the race in the first place.
Well, again, leave it to Samantha Bee to point out the obvious in a hilariously condescending and snarky way. But how many hundreds of millions of dollars have Tom Steyer spent and Michael Bloomberg spent already on this race? It's a lot. It's enough to buy and sell our piddly asses 6 times over, I'm sure.
And it's a waste of money. It's a waste of money. He came to the race late. Period. End of discussion. No one gives a shit.
But not only that. Think about it this way. It's just sort of a perfect example of white saviorism in the grandest scheme. In that Tom Steyer talks about climate change being his number one issue, that we need to take climate action. Bernie was right not to support the USMCA because of its lack of climate language, blah, 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 blah. You made a lot of your money on coal, so there's one shut the fuck up. And you've spent how many hundreds of millions of dollars since 2017 making advertisements all hours of the day and night that the president needs to be impeached, and then eventually supporting your presidential campaign. How far do you think that money could have gone to assist foundations fighting climate change, say in Australia or here in the United States, instead of buying every third ad during the World Series.
Oh.
Like, if you want to use your money to some good, go use your money to some good, and stop like mucking up the race, and let the professionals do their freaking job and take down the moron. Stop confusing the process and spend your money electing them and fixing the problems that you purport to give a shit about.
Again, the Democratic Party kind of got their own way. It's that simple. It's a joke. It's a fucking.
Yeah,
I'm so glad I'm a Democrat. I'm so glad I'm a Democrat.
See, yeah, I'm independent. Yeah. I registered for the Democratic Party because of the primary last election, but
NP fucking A. NP fucking
That's
A.
Right.
That's me. Anyway,
right.
We'll check in a couple weeks with the Iowa Caucus and start our.
That's right.
Down.
See if there's any,
as we did 4 years ago.
Developments in what's that?
As we did 4 years ago, we check in with the the political, what's going on with the the race. 4 years ago was fun.
Take the temperature of America.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I think it like a lot. It's going to start to get really exciting after Nevada and South Carolina.
Of course, yes.
And then, of course, moving into Super Tuesday.
Right.
That's going to pretty much decide the delegates.
Right.
But actually, one very positive political note that you and I kind of alluded to in a previous podcast was that during the Virginia special election, they flipped their state house. And they massively increased the likelihood that the ERA would be, the Equal Rights Amendment, would be voted to ratify by the Virginia State House. They technically, if they did so, would be the last state needed to cross the boundary of ratification, and the ERA could conceivably become a part of the United States Constitution. That happened yesterday.
Oh.
The Virginia State House voted to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. Now, there's a whole bunch of murky shit because a bunch of the deadlines that were originally signed by like President Carter and whatnot have long since passed. But in the wake of like Me Too and 21st century feminism, several states had voted to ratify despite the passing of the deadline, and Virginia officially marks the last one needed to cross the 3/4 threshold needed to ratify it for inclusion in the Constitution. So that's kind of a really big and historic thing, and if you're 40 or under, hasn't happened in your lifetime. So that's cool. And especially if there's going to be a Democrat in the White House in 2021, that really opens the door to the discussion of, could we see an amendment included in the Constitution this decade?
Interesting.
So way to go, people of Virginia, and keep your ear to the ground on that one, because that's an actually encouraging story.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, Mark, we'll talk in a couple weeks.
Yeah, end on a positive note.
There we go. You fixed the depressing ending now to the happier ending.
Yeah,
appreciate that, buddy.
We steered it back to the land of the happy.
All right, Mark. We'll talk a couple weeks after the caucus, and we'll check in again.
Yeah, we will. Talk to you soon.
All right, brother. Be good. Thank you.